Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm here with a dear friend, Sage Hobbs. She's a writer, facilitator, coach, devoted to exploring power of communication, relationships, and the self-expression that she so eagerly shares with everyone that she's around. She's the author of Naked Communication, which is the book we're going to talk about today. And not only that, she's been a part of our writing group for the last year, and I've just been such a joy to get to know her. Thank you so much for being here on the show, Sage.
Well, thank you as well. I'm really honored. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah. I was reading your book, and one thing, I was like, oh, I could hear Sage talking, which is really great. I want to tell you, so great that I could hear your voice. Like you have a strong voice, and your tone and the way you write comes across so genuine. So I want to
Thank
lift you up
you.
for that, because that's not always easy, because we get in our
Mm,
academic head, especially any of us who have been in education. We start trying to
hmm.
write like to sound good or sound smart. At least
Yeah.
that's how I used to do. And I really loved the way your book was so structured in a way that I could feel like you were talking to me as if you were in the
Mm,
room. So I thought that was great. Let's
thank you.
rewind a little bit before we talk about what's inside of this book to talk about naked communication. Where was the seed of this book, this idea? Because you were a counselor in schools before you kind of made this leap to kind of work outside of schools. What was the first step when you were writing this book? Because we're going to talk about the relaunch you're having happening right now, but tell us about that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved to write. I never thought of myself as a writer. So, um, talking has always come easily to me. So, in terms of, put me in front of a group of people, have a conversation. You've now been listening to me talk for a year in our writing group. And I thought, I wonder if I could create something that more people could have access to in the written word, but could feel like me, like conversationally accessible. And the way that the name came, it's like I was thinking about doing this, and I was at the time, my husband and I would drive all the way across the country from Colorado through Indiana to see his family and back to Philadelphia and New York to see mine with our two very small children, which is many thousands of miles, many hours of time together. And I was like, I want to write this book around like really what it means to connect with people in authentic ways, anyone, anywhere, regardless of who you are, where you're from. And I don't want it to be stuffy. Like I want it to be useful to people, but I don't want it to be dry because I'm not dry. And it was my husband who had this idea of naked communication. And we were driving through cornfields. I think we were in Iowa. I remember because there was like nothing out there. And I was like, huh. He's like, it's kind of punchy, which is you. He's very like steady. So I think that was the seed of, calling it like this idea of pulling back our layers and all of our conditioning and the things we're taught societally, culturally, within our own family systems, within the larger systems we grow up inside of. What if we were, and I had two little kids at the time, and I know you have kids too, Azul, but like the pureness of small children in terms of just their own expression is not yet so tamped down. Um, so I think I was in that state of mind as a new young mom of young kids of like, what if we all could just say things honestly and clearly? And so that's where it came from.
Yeah. And I think that's as it evolved into your work, leaving sort of the traditional path must have been a huge breakup, because from reading your book, I'm like, I think I would love to have had you a counselor in one of my schools, because it's hard to find counselors
Mm,
that there's some that can connect with kids, but not adults. There's
mhm. Yes.
and it would have been great to have you in the building. What was the leap like? How was it that you left from being in a very traditional setting to kind of steering your own ship, and then where did the book come in as part of that sort of conversation?
Yeah, great question. People thought I was crazy to leave public education. I was in, a school district that was a great school district, well paying, high performing. It was my own school district. My husband was a teacher there. So, like, our whole calendars were lined up, and I wasn't yet 40. And I was already, like, quote unquote, tenured. Like, I had that security, the golden handcuffs. But when I had my second child, first of all, I don't do anything like I'm not good at doing things halfway. So, as a counselor, I was really all in with my students and with the staff. Like I really like if I'm in the community, I'm in, you know? And when we had our second kid, it was really hard to both be public educators in terms of like what you get if you give at that level than to have anything left over for your own
Yeah.
kids. And I just, what I loved about education was the service, the connection, the cheerleading and championing of the underdog, the ability to help people see what else could be possible for them that, in its most ideal form, education could be the great disruptor of generational poverty. Like that excited me. Um, but the system is very restrictive, also in terms of creativity and expansion. And you can't turn a barge quickly, So I was sitting there with my second child and taking maternity leave and thinking, I don't really want to do this forever. Like, I love the students and it's great work. And I learned a ton that has informed the writing of this book, the content of this book, and all of the coaching and training and development I've done since this book. I feel like I learned so much by being a public educator. Um, when the communication is coming at you from every direction, all the emotions, all of that, and you're navigating how do you support people and walk them through all of the feelings and the experiences they're having. But so I started to float the idea and look at what it would mean financially and what would the first step be and the second step. And it's been a journey. It's now been 11 years since I left public education officially, even though I still coach and train inside of educational settings. And the book was like taking all of my distilled learnings, both from my own, master's degree, but also really from my lived experience of loss and relationships in my personal life, and then as a career counselor, into like a digestible way to talk about how we can connect more intentionally and meaningfully with people in our lives. And so, um, I started initially with coaching. The book came out of some time spent coaching and moving into how do it actually, to be honest, the book really helped me synthesize my own ideas and frameworks
Right.
um, by putting a structure around them. That was a really helpful, from that book came a lot of my training and development. Um, and it helped me sort of wrangle all of my educational background and my own lived experience in a way that felt like, okay, we can use this. But it wasn't
Yeah.
always fun to create it.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think that's what I love that if you're out there listening, if you're thinking about writing a book, a lot of authors wait to like, let me get it all figured out, then I'll write the book. And I said, well, gosh, that's part
Mhm.
of the process is when you commit to who you are on the page, you have to actually figure out who you are. Because a lot of the
Yeah.
secret sage sauce happens without you knowing. You're just living your life. I've
Right,
observed it and
right.
watched it, but then to kind of codify it and make it clear, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is how it works, this is, creating a framework. Frameworks are really important if you're using a book for, you know, building a program or some sort of training or
Mhm.
anything like that. It's really important to have a framework. And I thought you did a great job of communicating that in your book. Um, so let's kind of, I'm going to talk what's in there first before we get to that. I want to talk about that this book's been out for a while and you're just relaunching it. But there's a moment in time where you just stopped feeling really confident about this book. You just didn't feel as great about it as you had hoped. Talk about that because maybe some of you have a book out there. You're like, yeah, I don't want anybody to know it's out there. Tell us about what that feeling was like and why you decided to retackle the book.
Totally. Oh, man. I would say for about a year and a half. So it came out in 2016. I'm relaunching it now, 2026, so a decade later. For about a year and a half, I felt good about it. I told people about it. I did a huge book launching party. I spoke at our local, awesome local bookstore. It was, I don't know what the turning point exactly was, but somewhere about a year and a half or 2 years afterwards, I was like, cringe, 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 cringe. Like, I don't ever want to show this book to anyone. And my career, I mean, my business was really taking off. Like, I was doing more and more training and development and coaching. So you'd think that would be the perfect time to have this book. But, you've helped me a lot with this, Azul. It's really, in as modern of a world as we live in with everything available like in the digital space, it's so crazy how this book still has this significance, right? And like it exists out there, and you can't change it quite as quickly as you could take down a blog post or whatever, you know? And so I just started to feel like um it was no longer reflective of, like, my level. It was too casual. This is how I felt. I'm not saying it was accurate. This is just my ego and my inner critic voice, which, of course, I talked to other people about, but it just went haywire, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I would do this." All I kept saying is, "I would do this so much better now. I'm a much better writer. I know so much more about, human potential and, emotional intelligence and theory, like, I would do this so much better now." And because I had this notion, which is accurate. 10 years of a life, you should be doing something better, you
Yeah.
know? I therefore, like, was like, "Nope, that whole thing needs to just, like, let's just bury it because it's not as good as it could be now." Um, and gosh, what had me come back to it? That's a good question. I was around when I met you, I think. My mom had suddenly died, really suddenly, and it was like blew my entire world open. And I started writing more what I call kind of my literary pieces, with your support. And then I started thinking like when you have huge losses or big significant things in your life, oftentimes you reevaluate everything. So it was like, am I being accurate with what that book was, you know, like, is that even true? Or did I just decide to really like rain on my own parade, which, we always say we're our own worst enemies. And then I had a couple of cool experiences where people found me through that book. Like their therapist had recommended it to them. And this woman ended up on one of my virtual workshops. And I said, how did you find my work? She's like, my therapist told me to read your book and it made such a difference for me. And I was like, what? Like it blew my mind. This
Yeah.
therapist on two different people with therapists on the East Coast had told me that their book, they'd found my book through their it blew my mind. I'm thinking I had this little thing, it was my little secret. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, I really, really believe that what people hunger for the most is a sense of meaningful connection. And in our world right now, with so much dysfunction and fear, and violence, like maybe it's what we need more than anything is to feel seen and understood. And if I realize that my book could help somehow, some way, if I just stopped being so damn hard on myself. So here we go. We're
Yeah.
doing it again.
Here we go. And it's been a journey because, you know, I like, if you're like me, I didn't open that book I wrote a long time ago. I don't even look at it.
Mm,
Like, I don't know what's inside of it.
totally. I literally did not touch it for years.
Yeah. I didn't even know I had a copy. I was like, do I have to order my own, like another copy of this thing? I found one that was like the proof copy, but I was like, gosh, actually, some of the stuff I say in here, I still stand by. I actually don't hate this. I actually feel pretty good about it. So was that your experience reading through it? Because reading through it is like, I know I got to do this if I'm going to relaunch this thing, or at least I can't take it back. There are people who have this thing. I should at
Yeah.
least know what's in it. What was your
Right.
experience rereading it?
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, really, and you heard me say this, like I hated the cover so much. It was almost like just like I hated the cover so much I couldn't open the book. And which is so silly, but it was true. It was my experience, so I'm not even going to judge that. That's just how I felt about it. When I finally got courageous enough to be like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see if there's anything here that could still really support me and my work and people who read it. It was not nearly as bad as I thought. And the things that I changed and upgraded um felt really good to do. You know what I mean? But you're absolutely right. Like I love how you said that. There's still things that I would stand by. Uh and there were a lot of them for me. Like I talk a lot about, what is actually happening versus what we make up about what's happening, or how do we listen, really listen, in ways that people feel heard and understood. And how are you already communicating? Like, what's the self-reflection process of checking yourself out and seeing how do you do it before you try and fix it? What's going well, what's not? All of that I still had been training on and coaching on and teaching on and thinking about anyway. So yeah, it was not nearly as awful. Oh, I won't say that it was easy initially because there was lots of words I used. I don't know if you had this experience, but there were like words that I used repeatedly, maybe just a decade of language change of what's like hip or something. I don't know, but I was like, yikes, let's take out some of that. But it really, like, the core concepts, like, stood the test of time for sure. And I do feel proud of them. And, um, you know, we grow in 10 years. So as it should be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, Naked Communication being a book about communication for connection. Like, oftentimes, I think if you're a leader or in a position where you're using communication for information, hey, did you do this? Did you get this done? Like for informational transactions, this book really helped me understand the depth of what communication is for when you're using it for connection. And
Hmm.
what you just said was really interesting. You said about, there's a great line. You said, consider that who you are might be based on the stories you've been telling yourself. And I think that's such a relevant conversation, even the one that you're having with yourself about relaunching the book. You're like, oh my gosh, I was telling myself a story. I was like that.
Hmm.
It's just so
Hmm.
funny how the
Constant.
things
It's constant.
we need to hear are the things we say to other people often. Um,
Totally.
but one of the things I thought was really interesting when you talked about fact versus fiction, it kind of invites this idea of inviting curiosity. Tell me more about that, because I thought it was a really great point you make in your book about curiosity as a way of engagement in conversation that doesn't shut it down too soon.
Mm. Oh my gosh. If we could lead with curiosity, like, think of what the world would be like. I mean, not to be grandiose, but I honestly was just listening to a book by another author whose name I can't recall right now, but she was like, what if when, um, people came from Europe and they encountered the Native Americans, they had, instead of thinking we need to dominate, we had thought, huh, what are you guys up to? What are you creating? What would society have been like if we had forged it together? I mean, it was like, it seems so basic, but it's like, as opposed to I know the way and my way is the way. Like, what if we just leaned into every conversation with a childlike wonder of, I wonder why they believe that, or what makes them see it that way. And that's a really hard thing for us to do because we're really attached to being right, and we've been conditioned that the way we see the world is the way the world is. Versus, like, if you talk to any 3 siblings in a family unit and you ask them about their mother or their father or their mothers and fathers, whoever raised them, you're gonna get different interpretations of what happened in childhood. Somebody's
Yeah.
gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, mom and dad, like, when they got divorced, they were really, chill about it pretty much, like, it didn't impact me that much," and the others are gonna be like, "Are you kidding me? It was awful, like, it totally rocked my world," you know? And we are made to make information make sense, like, we're trying to understand things, and so we're quick to categorize them. I think that's a survival instinct, um, but if you can sit in that curiosity more, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I'll have people who are like, they'll just convinced that somebody they lead on their team is terrible at X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, are they terrible at it or do they not know how to do it? Like, and so they're embarrassed because they don't know how to ask for support. Like, what if you just went and said, what's getting in the way of, you know, of you being able to execute on X, Y, and Z? Like, genuine curiosity versus assuming we know how it is. It's like revolutionary kind of, and I'm not saying I'm always good at it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have to remind myself of that regularly, especially I'm the mother now of 2 teenagers who think they know things, and I'm like, "I really do know a few things about that." But again, when I ask more open questions, and consider, like, you know, my son has always a really good point, my 16-year-old, around, like, why he thinks things at school are relevant or irrelevant versus just that he's supposed to think they're relevant because this is the path forward in our system, you know what I mean? So, I think that it's funny to me that you chose fact versus fiction because for me, that's like, there's 2 probably key biggest parts of the book, maybe that one and this concept of really getting it, like, really being able to understand other people's point of view, that for me are like, if you could get those 2 pieces really integrated into yourself, like, game changer for how you form relationships and lead your teams, etcetera.
Yeah. What do you notice when you work with a leader, a team, or even in private coaching, that is the hardest shift to make in sort of getting communication for connection kind of to make sense to them? How do they, what's one of the stumbling blocks they face? I mean, obviously, this idea of fact versus fiction and the stories we make, but is there anything else that you notice that they kind of stumble with in order to just kind of get over the hump of some of their perceived beliefs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that, funnily enough, one of the things I've already said about myself in the process of writing a book and re-releasing it is this inner critic voice of like, you know, making ourselves wrong. I had a very high level successful female executive say to me, "Have you ever like do you ever work with clients who are truly self-confident?" And I thought, and it was so funny because everybody to the outside world would have pegged her as such. You know what I mean? Like she's got it all together, so on and so forth. And I said, yeah, the thing is that even if you're really self-confident, you still have that doubt, that voice in our heads. Like no matter what, the answer is no. I have not worked with anybody who hasn't at some point said in our work together, like, I just don't know if I know how to do that, or if I did that right, or if I handled that well, or maybe I'm not really cut out for this. Like, actually, they think I know all this stuff, and it's going to be up. The gig's going to be up, and they're going to know, that I don't know as much as I'm supposed to. And so, courage, I guess, would be like fear and courage. Two sides of that, right? That people get afraid to really lean into the vulnerability required for meaningful connection, and when they can and get the value of why it's worth it, then they can find the courage to lead and connect in that way. So I would say that fear slash courage transition is probably the thing I see a lot of.
Yeah, in my line of work now as a coach, I'm very certain that everyone is terrified of what happens next. um, and I've worked with professional athletes and politicians and very very successful people on the outside, but this
Right.
idea of am I doing it right? Is this any good? How do I know if it's going to be any good? And the people that tell me they're not afraid, I'm always very skeptical. Not because
Right.
maybe they just don't know it yet, but they're not calling it fear because they've programmed themselves out of it. But like writing a book is the perfect thing to help you see yourself in a place you've never been before. And let's talk
Mm,
about that a little bit because you've been writing, not only re-releasing this book, which is a whole heck of a process to have to tackle while navigating grief, as you mentioned, your mom passing away suddenly, and then writing this book that you're not sure what it is yet. It's kind of pulling and pushing on you. It's calling your name and it's pushing back. What has that process been like to face 2 books at once, and how do you know when you're to put one down and pick it up? Like, what was the process been like for you?
mm. It's a great question. Well, you've been watching it. It's made me crazy. I'm excited for this book, the first book to relaunch in some ways, so that I can then, which will happen, very soon, so that I can then return sort of to the creative joy of writing this second book. And in some ways, it took the pressure off of the second book to focus on the first book again, which already had a structure. And the second book is, uh, as you mentioned, it's so much more like amorphous. I can't wrangle it yet. It's just like a, 50,000 word collection of my heart and soul in in
Yeah.
in essays, and I'm not sure where it's going. But I did what was cool about doing them both a little simultaneously in these last few months is I thought they were totally different. I kept saying after my mom died, like, there's my professional self and then there's like my creative self, and like they're totally disparate. Like I have to have my business self and professional self, and then there's over here is all of this, grief and loss and figuring out midlife transitions. I have neither of my parents, like, so being a parentless middle-aged adult, uh and I kept holding them really in two complete like silos. And what I've really started to see is they're not actually wildly different. Like the first one, this naked communication is really like the how to, right? Like the how to communicate in ways that are really going to drive your personal and professional relationships to have value. And hopefully, this second one is a why to, like, because if you do that, while grief is just like has gutted me. I can hardly even talk about it still. It's what you get from like that kind of love and connection. So I thought I was doing completely different things, and one was just my own personal sort of creative project, and then I realized no, it's not. Like losing both my parents and my dear friend, like it's this is how you do it, and then there's the why you do it. You do it for the richness of what's available when you do. So that's been a cool thing to have these two projects juxtaposed, is to see actually how, I'm not two humans cleaved in half, like
Yeah.
they're connected.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the process of, at least I'm not sure the exact process you did for the first book, but at least the process that I coach and teach is that it's trying to move it away from the idea that writing should be academic in nature first, meaning I have something that you could know and here's for you and now you know it. With that requires so much more of our humanity, and
Mhm.
it's really difficult. I mean,
Mhm.
I've written
Mhm.
books in 30 days, some on my shelf, and I've been working on this other book for a decade. So I know how painful that each book has a different way. Um, but one thing I've observed is the more you're okay with it being uncertain, the more you're okay with, I don't know what happens next, because that's where you are at life. Life is saying,
Right.
I don't know what happens next. I was pretty certain I knew what was happening next, but now I don't. And I think the more as an author you can lean into that uncertainty is where the edge starts to get finer and finer. So the reader starts to see themselves, because as experts, as people who know what we're doing, who help people, we kind of have to be on this, we can be vulnerable, but we have to kind of know what we're doing. Like when I was a principal, I was like, I kind of need to be the person that knows what's happening. I can't be like, I don't know what's happening.
Right, right, right. You couldn't stay in your favorite question of "I wonder" forever. You had to
I wonder what happens if we don't get out of this building that's on fire. I couldn't have that
Yeah, right.
luxury. Um, but I do feel more a sense of uncertainty when I'm writing now, because there's no one going to tell me it's right or wrong. I don't have, I'm not writing for a specific strategic purpose yet. And that's asking me to figure out, what do I want this book to do for me?
Yeah, it's hard. That part that has
It's,
been very hard for somebody who likes to know where I'm going.
yeah. Let's apply that question to the first book, because it was on my mind when I was reading your first book. Who would you say this book's for? Like, I know there's people you serve, but like, describe the personality, the character personality, not the role that they serve. Because I had my viewpoint, but I was like, I wonder what Sage would say, who is reading this book.
Hmm. It's a great question. I mean, the idealist in me wants to say it's for absolutely everybody, and if I could get people who are wildly different from me to read this book, that would be like the accomplishment of a lifetime. um, whether or not that's going to happen, I don't know, but really, it's for anyone who uh understands on some level, even if they don't know how to get there, that your personal happiness and professional success are directly related to the quality of your relationships. Like, they're like, something is there. I don't, kind of the way you ask me to sit in my discomfort of not knowing the the structure and the forward motion of the writing process. For me, there are people who are just called to like, I know that I want what you have. Like, I know that I want friendships or to go to work no matter what industry you're in. I don't care if you show up to what's considered the most boring office job, or you're out, in the field, mechanical engineer. I don't care, but that you know that there's some way in which your life quality is about like how you are with the people around you, not way more so than whatever you're doing. And I've seen that across industries, right? So I guess that's who it's for me, is that those folks who are like, even if they think I'm pretty good at it, I have pretty good friends, I have pretty good direct reports, I have, pretty good team, but they're like, I know that, when I've had my favorite jobs, it's because I love the people I worked with, or I know that when I spend time with my best friends and I come home feeling so much better, it's because, they get me. So it's that kind of person who has at least a little notion of curiosity around, wow, what would that be like if
Yeah.
I could like really up level my ability to talk to anyone about anything at any time? What would that be
Yeah.
like?
That's great. I thought because I was trying to wrangle it in my own heart before I asked you the question, which is based on the examples you shared and the way you talked about it, this is really for people who secretly don't feel like it's going well, but they don't know, but they're aiming the discomfort of the relationships not going well towards the people rather than the communication. So I thought,
Mm.
I was like, ooh, this is uncomfortable, but this is probably who this is for. So here's the other question. Who might this not be for? And I say it like that. My friend Dana Malstaff, I say, yeah, who's this not for? She goes, well, let's just say who it's not for yet. I said, okay, that's okay. But I really don't, I want to know who is it not for, because I think that's an interesting conversation to have around a book, because if you
That
can
is
figure out who it's
interesting.
not for, it lets you actually hyper focus on the delivery of who it is for, so that you're you're not assuming it's for a certain group of people.
That's a really hard question because again, I just told you that my, like, idealist optimist self is like, "Everyone needs it," but no, it's not for folks who really just like to do things their way, who lead more traditionally by, like, domination and, authoritarianism, and I don't even mean, like, I'm not trying, like, not like dictatorship, but just, you wanna do things your way, that is working for you. You are clear that that's the way that you approach life is like, I'm good. I got this on my own, like I'm making good decisions. I'm feeling like I know how to do this or I'm doing it just fine. Um it's not for folks who aren't interested in collaboration or who aren't really interested in some kind of valuing of community. Um Now, I kinda think, like, the coach in me is like, I don't think there's anybody, if I were to excavate a little bit more, who actually fits into that mold, but there's certainly people who believe that they do, right? Like, "This is how it's going fine, I've got it dialed, this is what's working, I'm gonna stick with my proven path," and, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that's who it's not for, those who think they've got it figured out and they prefer to, uh, do things on their own and in their own way.
Yeah. Ironically, that's the same answer I came up with. I said, this is for people who think that they don't have a communication problem. It's not for them. Which is sort of hard because that's the one you want for it to be for. But the
It's
most challenging
interesting.
part is those are the hardest people to shift, because if they don't believe they have a problem with communication, they're not even ready to pick up a book. They're not there yet. But this is for the
Yeah, it's
person
a
that
good
says,
question.
gosh, it's just not, things aren't the way they used to be. I'm not loving this new group. I'm not, they're already feeling the tension and they're starting to uncover. They may not know what it is. They may not think it's them.
Mm.
They might think it's other people.
Mhm.
But people who don't think they have a problem with communication, I don't think this book's for, because I don't think they'll serve them, because they're closed off to the idea that maybe possibly it could be me. So
Mhm.
I think you're
Mhm.
onto
That's a
something. It's
great
just
point.
hard for you to want to say that, because like, oh, those are the people I want to help the most. And I tell authors, like, let other people help those people.
Mm.
Uh, and the reason I say
Mm.
that is you have a really good chance of helping the person who's ready for your book, and probably a zero chance of helping the people who think they're really good at communication, don't need a book about communication,
Right.
or that their relationships at work are going really, really well. And they're the one everyone else is talking about at work. Like, oh my
Right, they're
gosh,
like,
my boss.
This person" I know. Hopefully somebody else will give them the book.
Yes. Hopefully somebody else will.
But yeah.
Yeah. This has
Yeah,
been
thank you.
wonderful. I really want to, as you're kind of doing both writing a book that's sort of uncomfortable and like not sure where it's going, and publishing a book I think you should feel really proud about. I really enjoyed reading it. I was really
Thank you as well.
touched by the examples of your own family and the work and how this book came to be. I mean, I was kind of leading people through that because I wanted them to know more about you. But I thought you did a wonderful job. Where would they go to learn more about you, about what you do, and maybe connect with you as an author?
Yeah, great. My website, sagebhobbs.com, is the place where everything is. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't really do much other social media, as you and I were talking about. So Sage B. Hobbs is the best place. Also, the book is on Amazon. And I just want to thank you as well too, because something you taught me to see about myself, and that's your magic power, is helping people see things about themselves, is that really is the what I love the most is storytelling. So this is, this book is telling folks how to do something better, but it's really done through lots of stories. And that has been the through line where you just said, lean into that, Sage. You love to tell stories. I'm like, you know what? I do. So thank you for helping me see myself in that way and make it less like constraining or constrictive, what it's supposed to be like to be an author. That's just been it's brought the joy back into it for me. And yeah, I'd love to connect with your listeners.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
awesome. And for anyone wondering if you should read Naked Communication, if any of these things struck your heart about like I could have better relationships at work, at school, in life, even at home, this is a great book. And I love this section where you said, try this, because I really felt like it was an invitation. And so I'm saying this to all of you, try this, give this book a shot. Thanks, Sage, for being here. It's
Mm,
always a pleasure to connect with you. And I wish you best of luck on this new book's launch.
Thank you, Azul, so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.